Bradley Strauchen-Scherer, and I am one of the musical instrument curators at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And we have a collection of over 5,000 instruments that spans 4,000 years and 6 continents. But one of the high points of our collection, we're particularly well known for our keyboard instruments, and we have a number of very interesting early pianos in our collection.
So what do you think, as a curator of the instrument collection, about having those instruments in a playable condition?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and it's the question that many musical instrument curators are asked very often.
I can imagine.
And one of the big challenges, or one of the big paradoxes of being a musical instrument curator, is the fact that we have these wonderful objects that are built to make sound, but particularly in a large museum environment where we have millions of visitors a year, the irony is that these sounding things are often silent behind glass. So one of my challenges is that I think all the time about how our galleries can be about music and how we can bring sound into the galleries and how we can bring the experience of music into the galleries. And at the Met, we have what I like to call a generous handful of musical instruments that we maintain in playing condition. And obviously with a collection of 5,000, it can't be all of them.
What?
And sometimes things come to museums because they're at the end of their playing life, and structurally, and because of the wear and decay of materials, they still tell us things, but they're not in a robust condition to be played.
Right.
But what we do think about, the way we like to approach things at the Met, is rather than saying we have a no playing policy or we play everything, we believe that instruments are very much like people.
Yeah.
Each one is a unique case. And when we're considering whether to maintain an instrument in playing condition or how we respond to a request for playing an instrument, it's a calculus in our minds. We think about what do we stand to gain, what do we learn by playing an instrument, versus what do we stand to lose by putting something in playable condition? Is it something that's so physically fragile that there's a risk there?
Yeah.
Or is it something that perhaps has wear patterns that haven't been disturbed for hundreds of years that give us valuable information about performance technique and that we don't want to disturb that? But as I was saying earlier, in a handful of cases, we really do have some very important historic instruments that are maintained in playing condition. And one of the very interesting ones, I know you have a particular interest in pianos, and of course, as you know, there are 3 surviving Cristofori pianos in the world: New York, Rome, and Leipzig, and they're all getting ready to celebrate their 300th birthdays during the next decade, starting with the Mets in 2020, so that's really quite exciting.
Yeah.
But the Cristofori is one of the instruments that we do maintain in playing condition, and that's very much, it relates to the history of our Cristofori. It's had a very lengthy history of being a playing instrument. So in the late 18th and throughout the 19th century, it's had various subtle modifications and interventions to keep it playing. And as late as the 20th century, it has had work done on it. And because of that, on one hand, we can lament the originality of the instrument that's been lost by some of this work, but on the other hand, we have a living document, and one which we feel still conscientious and responsible in allowing that instrument to be played periodically in a controlled manner. So we've done recording work with it. And the power of being able to play an instrument, it's difficult to think of anything that is more compelling than hearing an instrument. It's very unscientific in some ways, but it's very visceral, because the ability of these objects to speak to people about the time and place when they were made. And the Cristofori is a particularly interesting example because almost everybody has had some experience with the piano. And when people who've studied piano for a couple of years or people who love to listen to the piano, they look at the Cristofori and they think, gosh, it literally all started here with this instrument. And then it's a great surprise to them to be able to hear the instrument and to hear how different the sound of Cristofori's instrument is from the modern instrument that they know. And for some people, that's the beginning of an awareness that the composers who wrote some of our most beloved classical and romantic piano repertoire lived in a very different soundscape. And it's not a better soundscape or a worse soundscape, just different. And to actually be able to hear the instruments that some of these composers and performers would have known during their lifetime gives us incredible insight into thinking about traveling in terms of aesthetics, in terms of taste and style to a different world. To me, it's as close as you can come to time travel, I think.